for Nigeria, which now has a 14% tariff on its exports. Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Jumoke Oduwole, says Nigeria's federal government, led by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and the Renewed Hope agenda, is focused on its efforts to continue building economic resilience and accelerating export diversification. Speaking to our Rice International correspondent, Adefemi Akinsanya, on the sidelines of the Commonwealth Trade and Investment Summit in London, the minister says, while Nigeria still considers the United States a valued trade and investment partner, there's now a need to look at how non-oil can perform as part of intra-Africa trade through the African Free Trade Agreement.
So thank you very much for your time. Let's jump straight into it. The United States has placed a tariff of 14% on Nigerian exports. In comparison to other countries, we are not the hardest hit, but this is still considerable. This is still noticeable, and it is expected that there is going to be some form of a relatively negative impact on Nigerian exports, on Nigeria's ability to be internationally competitive when it comes to the official position of the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment. What is your position? How are you feeling?
The U.S. is a long-term trading partner, strategic. Most of our exports to the U.S. is oil, and that's under the AGOA right now. So Nigeria is really in quite a good position. We have to also think about our second largest fertilizers, urea, lead. Those are businesses that have been growing in market share. This gives them uncertainty. This gives them a disruption to their operations. So we're working with those types of businesses. We're also looking at our MSMEs. They are not covered by AGOA. It's just about 2%. But for businesses that are US focused, this will be a disruption to their businesses. So we're also working with them to diversify. Nigerians export to over 250 countries. We're very much bullish about the AFCFTA and enabling our exporters to really take full operationalization of that agreement. So those are some of the strategies. Looking across the world as well, as you know, Mr. President has been working on generating investment from different countries across the world since May of 2023. And what that means is that a lot of G2G agreements, so we're working on a SEPA with UAE, we've been working on also with the US, the ambassador, we had a meeting just last week. So trade is a continuum. When you have announcements like this, they're really quite sensational. But for Nigeria, I would say that conservatively, we're in quite a good space. However, this disruption affects the entire world, the entire trading system. And therein lies the danger. We don't want the global economy to go into a recession. We don't want retaliation. You know, Africa is kind of insulated from global trade because we're just less than 5%, like about 3% of global trade. So the players that really dominate, we don't want that retaliation, and then we end up being collateral damage or the unintended consequences. So that's really what the issue is and why it's making headline news.
I am glad that you've mentioned the distinction between retaliation and responding, because naturally Nigeria is your first priority. So when we're looking at Nigeria's ability to be internationally competitive in this way, what are your thoughts? And then if we look specifically at the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, do you think that implementation of this agreement has done the work it needed to do to prepare Africa, to prepare Nigeria for an eventuality like this? What are your feelings when it comes to this agreement and different types of collaborations with different international bodies when it comes to positioning Nigeria in the best possible way?
So the good thing is that we're responding, we're not reacting. This has been a priority area since I came into office, operationalizing the AFCFTA. You know that Mr. President has been commended as Digital Trade Champion. We've been pushing our export agenda. We hosted the Secretary General on the 16th of January. We were in Addis. At Davos, I was very bullish about this agenda. So we have had a plan under the 8-point agenda. Item 7, which is where this industry comes to play, speaks to accelerating diversification. So this is an area that we've been looking at for a long time, because this is what's going to help MSMEs. MSMEs are nearly 50% of Nigeria's GDP. And so we've looked at that demographic and we identified the AFCFTA because it speaks to women-led businesses, youth-led businesses. It speaks to informal sector, formalizing it. It speaks to MSMEs and how they can attract foreign exchange by exporting across the continent. So we've identified it as an area that would work for the Nigerian economy. Recently inaugurated the Central Coordinating Committee for the AFCFTA to operationalize, domesticate. Mr. President approved the gazetting of our ECOWAS tariffs, and we're waiting on the procedural work and then to submit to the AFCFTA Secretariat. So this is not new for us, and that's where planning and strategy and prioritization comes in. So when we look at global events, you know that ECOWAS, also the Sahel Alliance states, also came up with something last week. Now the US came up with something. The WTO is also looking at this area. So when you have a strategy that you are implementing, haven't looked at the demographics of your own economy and what would be good for your people. You've heard us speak about digital trade and why, exporting of business services and why, facilitating export for AFCFTA, for our MSMEs, looking at free zones, looking at tax reforms. All these things enable the Nigerian economy under this president to respond rather than to panic and react. And so even when we're talking with old friends, talking with new friends, you see that we're here in the UK. The British High Commissioner, we had a meeting. I hosted him on Thursday. Last week it was the American ambassador. We've also met with the Chinese, the Brazilians, the Japanese, UAE. We're hosting the first investment summit, Investopia of the UAE in September in Lagos. It's time to really put your trade policy and your investment strategy, investment attraction strategy to play. And it puts you in a position where you can respond with confidence to situations like this.
Okay, Jumoke Oduwole there, our meaty minister of the Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry. Now, at the Commonwealth Trade and Investment Summit in London, staying interconnected despite examples of isolationism from the world's largest consumer market was the priority. For Nigeria, which was represented at the federal, state, and private sector levels, capitalizing on the new opportunities on offer at this summit is crucial. Again, Arise international correspondent Adefemi Akinsanya, who is in London, reports.
In an interconnected world, there must be trade, and the Commonwealth wants to be the marketplace of choice. That was the recurring theme at the Commonwealth Trade and Investment Summit in London. 56 countries, one common language, law, and opportunity. And after the United States unleashed import tariffs on the world, the coming together of the Commonwealth is happening at a crucial time.
Our objectives went out the window as a result of Donald Trump's announcements recently. Our objectives was obviously to perpetuate trade and business within the Commonwealth, which we've successfully done over 10 or 12 years now. This is now turbocharged. This is game changer beyond game changer. We have a whole new raft of relationships that can be built. And I can't believe how lucky we are we've got so many Nigerians here, because Nigeria is without doubt starting to move again economically. They're looking for inward investment. We've just heard about it here. And we want to be part of that. We want to help. We've got a lot of Nigerian members. We've got a lot of Nigerian friends. We owe a great deal to Nigeria as an organization.
After the US put a 14% tariff on Nigerian exports, the Nigerian Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment says it's focused on diversifying its trade options.
Nigerians export to over 250 countries. We're very much bullish about the AFCFTA and enabling our exporters to really take full operationalization of that agreement. So those are some of the strategies. Looking across the world as well, as you know, Mr. President has been working on generating investment from different countries across the world since May of 2023. And what that means is that a lot of G2G agreements, so we're working on a SEPA with UAE, we've been working on also with the US, the ambassador, we had a meeting just last week. So trade is a continuum. When you have announcements like this, they're really quite sensational. But for Nigeria, I would say that conservatively, we're in quite a good space.
Statistics suggest it's 20% cheaper to do business within the Commonwealth. But in order to capitalize on that advantage, Nigeria's manufacturing preparedness is crucial.
Right now, we can't be as competitive as we're supposed to because we're not productive. You need to increase your production in different areas, starting from agriculture, be able to feed yourself, which we have vast uncultivated land compared to any other country I've studied, into productivity in terms of manufacturing and other activities. So what we need to do is to go back, recalibrate our position because the economy is critical, support our SMEs, support the productive and manufacturing sector to increase productivity, which will help us in navigating the situation.
Peter Mbah has been at the helm of Enugu State as governor since May 2023. His priority has been identifying high-growth sectors such as energy, agriculture and healthcare and taking them further.
To grow the economy of Enugu in the next 6 years from 4.4, actually today we're close to 10 billion. We'll have to then grow that to 30 billion. So what that simply means is that we would have to attract high growth investments. And we have them in a number of sectors. For example, what we have done is to take the agriculture sector, for example. We've been able to curate and prepare several investment opportunities across the upstream, the midstream and the downstream of the agriculture sector.
Where other than Lagos can Nigeria's largest population be found? Who other than its governor can be seen building the Lagos of the future brick by brick?
We've done a lot of heavy lifting. Since before COVID, during COVID, post-COVID, there's been a lot of improvement. We've doubled almost the GDP of the state in 6 years. You've seen those improvements in infrastructure, in rail, in health, but there's still a lot of work to be done. There's still a lot of heavy lifting that we need to do. And so that's why we're here. We're here to tell the Nigerian story, to tell the Clear Lagos story, that we're building a shared prosperity for a future. We just don't want it to be an Africa mega model city. We want it to be a city that is functional, that is working, that is real.
As the day's events came to an end, there's a renewed sense of optimism. Nigeria's competitiveness at the state, federal and international level is the priority for many here at the Commonwealth Trade and Investment Summit. The question now, though, is when. When will these new opportunities materialize into the type of prosperity that will overflow and trickle down to the people who need it the most? Because they are waiting. Adefemi Akisanya, Arise News, London.
Joining us now to review some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akisanya herself, live in London. Good morning, Adefemi.
Good morning, Dr. Rubin. Good morning, Bimbai. And good morning to you, Rotus. Welcome, Rotus. How are you doing?
I'm good. Good morning, Adefemi. Great work.
Morning. Thank you so much, my friend. I'm hearing that today is Rufai's birthday, so we're going to have to extend a huge happy birthday to our dear friend Rufai. It looks like he's done what we don't usually do, which is take a day off to celebrate your day. So huge happy birthday to Rufai. But let me tell you, I was about to say, let me tell you what's happening around the world. Let me tell you what's happening on these newspapers, because, we've taken up our Time for the World brief with these packages. But essentially, let's get straight into our papers. Start with the front page of This Day this morning. And This Day leads with, of course, the story of what feels like eternity, but essentially it is, of course, Nigeria's economic team set to meet again over these Trump tariffs. Now, Vimbai, heard what you said earlier today about essentially perhaps this is just a little too late. I think many people would agree with you. Of course, we have comments from our finance minister and coordinating minister of the economy, Wale Jun, talking about how, there's a huge global uncertainty with this Trump tariff situation. Moving on, though, to the picture headline of this day, and what you can see is that the founder and chairman of Zenith Bank, Jim Ovia, has received the Freedom of the City of London Award yesterday. It happened at Mansion House. I was there. It was a wonderful spectacle to see him get this award. And then there was a reception at the Dorchester, a very, very swanky party, if I have to say so myself. OG has all of the details on what's trending, so you're really going to want to tune in for that. But as you can see, Jim Ovia is holding his award there, his placard, alongside the CEO and Managing Director of Zenith Bank, Dame Adara Umeoji, as well as Aliko Dangote, and then our very own Prince Nduka Obaigbena on the far end. Moving on to this week's edition of The Advocate by Onikepo Braithwaite. She looks at the killing of the 16 people in Uromi over in Edo State, with a special focus on the dangers of selective justice. As always, a fantastically written piece on a very timely topic. I urge you all to read her piece this week. The New Telegraph, however, this morning looks at fears of a global recession, again looming because of what we're seeing in America with these tariffs coming from Trump. Nigeria has also joined the global stock plunge with a 458 billion naira loss. It's the same story on the front page of The Guardian this morning. Their headline reads that Trump's trade war is fueling recession fears and disrupts the federal government's 5 trillion naira fiscal plan. And then on the front page of The Punch, it's the local government financial autonomy situation. Now, governors are blocking chairmen from opening accounts at the Central Bank of Nigeria. Now, The Punch's article doesn't specifically name any governor or state, but does reference the South. So very interesting times ahead there. And then there are reports of a rift, unfortunately, within the Hajj Commission on the front page of the Nation newspaper, I believe it is, or the Daily Independent, rather. Or I think it may well be the Daily Trust. I'm doing this all from memory. But essentially what we're seeing is that the Hajj Commission, there's some form of inner wrangling going on there. Essentially, this is just days before the 2025 pilgrimage cycle begins, the Hajj to Saudi Arabia. And unfortunately, there are members of the commission who have expressed displeasure with the leadership style of the commission's chairman, Professor Abdullahi Saleh Usman. And then finally, on the front page of the Daily Independent, we do have police. They have dispersed crowds with tear gas, both in Abuja and Port Harcourt. Those are your Nigerian papers this morning.
Adefemi, your memory is sharp. You nailed it. So you were correct with that prior headline. Well done at the Commonwealth Investment Summit. I did want to note that Lord Marland did say, quote, Nigeria's economy is moving again, recognizing the reforms. And also, you know, the great work talking to the Minister of Trade and Investments. As we've already said, there's only so much that they can do in terms of responding to what Trump is looking for. And and happy birthday to Rifai. Everyone in our YouTube community is shouting him out there as they're watching live. So thanks for that. Happy birthday to Rifai.
All right, very quickly, let's begin with your interview with the minister. Well done again for that great outing. I'm concerned, though, that the minister is still referring to AGOA, which we all know is expiring in September 2025. However, the executive orders implementing the tariffs nullify the existence of AGOA. So I'm a little bit concerned that she's still placing some of our bets for, you know, our Nigerian exports on AGOA. That's a point of concern. Now, my other focus was taken to the protests that took place yesterday in Abuja and Port Harcourt, labeled the Take It Back protests, another wave, what was supposed to be another wave of nationwide protests against bad governance. And there was several back and forth yesterday, especially in Port Harcourt. And we saw the police release a statement to say that they never opened fire on any protesters and they never dispersed any protesters. But unfortunately, seeing that there was a scuffle that took place with the police, and just unfortunate, we just need to cultivate a culture where we can learn how to keep protests orderly, and for the police to also just exercise restraint. Yes, the protesters themselves can get overexcited, but that's what a protest is about. So I think we still have just such a long way to go, because people need to be comfortable enough and confident enough that if they step out to go and exercise their democratic freedom, to protest, that it won't spell doom for them. And you find that for now, there are a lot of people who have so many frustrations that they'd like to vocalize. If you just saw the comments that went on from the hands-off protests in the United States, and people were saying, well, in Nigeria, we also have a lot of things that we would want to speak out about, but nobody feels safe enough. Nobody has the confidence that if they go out to protest, they won't be accused and charged with a number of other things that they didn't intend to, beyond just expressing their displeasure at one or two issues. So those are my main takeaways for today.
Okay, Adefemi, well, I mean, my major concern is about this Commonwealth Trade and Investment Summit 2025, CTIS, taking place against the background of this crisis within the global market. Now, Ayoko Bochwe, the Commonwealth Secretary General, at the opening plenary yesterday, made the point that these Commonwealth countries will need to come together, talk about cooperation, and see how they can stand up, if it were possible, by these 56 countries of unequal weight, against Donald Trump. But I'm interested in the performance of Nigeria at that occasion. Some of the literature that I've seen says that Governor Peter Mba is going to make a presentation to talk about investment opportunities in Enugu State. And also that Governor Ademola Adeleke of Osun State is also going to network, make some presentations, even visit the museum to explore cultural opportunities. What are the other people there? What are they doing? Because I see that there must be a large Nigerian, delegation. Are the other people from Nigeria, are they there for tourism or networking? What have you observed? Because even yesterday, there was a program about the Cameroonians presenting their development agenda for 2030. So that large Nigerian contingent that you must have observed, what specifically are they doing? Because we want to know. I know what Peter Mba says he has gone there to do, what Adeleke is doing there. All the other ones, are they there for photo opportunities? Have you observed them doing anything concrete and contributing to the conversation, or just they and their aides loitering around and taking pictures, which is a typical Nigerian behavior?
Well, I mean, I was there yesterday. We spent the whole day there. And just because the people you're referring to aren't here to defend themselves directly to the questions you've asked, which are valid, I do think that they definitely use their opportunity to really market themselves and their different states as effectively as they could. We had a roundtable where you had the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Dr. Jumoke Oduwole, alongside Lord Martin, and of course the two state governors of Lagos State, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, and of course Peter Mba. And each of them literally sat in front of people who are expressing direct and aggressive interest into moving into different pockets of the Nigerian space. If we look at healthcare technology, Randox was actually there. I'm sure Randox would be a name that rings many bells, especially when we're looking at COVID and diagnostics testing. And they talked about how they had already established a personal relationship in areas like Enugu State, and they were very interested in returning to Enugu State and also setting up shop in Lagos State to be able to facilitate PPP types of partnerships. So there were really concrete conversations being had as far as deals being signed, formal agreements being made. I do think it's still quite early on in the process. It is a 2-day summit. It will be interesting to see if there's any memorandums of understanding, any concrete deals that will be announced. But as it stands, it was very interesting to see up close these different levels of government in Nigeria really doing the work of international diplomacy. There was a lot of conversation about how trading within the Commonwealth, because you're trading with countries that have a shared language of English, have common laws, common ways of doing business. So it made sense for Nigeria to be in the room. And Nigeria was really the most popular country, if I can say that, at the summit. Of course, they weren't the only country. There was Ghana, there were other countries. You mentioned Cameroon actually being a francophone country and not actually being part of the Commonwealth. But I do think that it was a strong outing for Nigeria on the first day. and we will continue to keep our eyes and ears open to see what specifics, what concrete things will be coming out, because we do cover a lot of these events, and sometimes it is, as you say, a lot of spectacle and not a lot of substance, but there is a lot of optimism that this time would be different, especially in light of what's been happening with the US tariffs.
Very good to hear you saying Nigeria has to be in the room at this important moment in the world, you know. And Cameroon, yes, why not? It's not all British former colonies that are there. Togo and Gabon
even Qatar was there,
the Commonwealth in 2022. But just one small request from me. Can you keep an eye on our Nigerian delegation, that they attend the sessions, although the program will end today, and that when they finish, they'll come back home and they don't disappear into shops for tourism, and that they make substantial contribution. You know, Nigeria.
Is that what they do?
Oh,
they go shopping?
No, you don't know our people. Anyway, the conference.
They can't have the time. It's from the summit to the negotiation room to the airport, back to Lagos, back to Abuja. They don't have time.
The summit ends today. Let them come home and not disappear into the shops, because the world is engaged in very important conversations at this time. Thank you, Adifa.